Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes for more people to join, and then we will start moving. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feminist Leadership in Disarmament. On today's webinar, we'll be focusing on grassroots activism and its role in providing feminist perspectives to disarmament. A very big welcome to our amazing speakers, who I will go on to introduce later. This webinar is the fourth thematic webinar as part of our broader Feminist Leadership in Disarmament project, which includes a webinar series along with research, opinion, and blog posts, as well as a social media campaign. The project's objectives is to raise awareness on the achievements and contributions of women working in the field, with a focus on women from the Global South. We also aim to explore the challenges that women face as they enter and progress in the field of disarmament. For this webinar, we aim to develop an understanding of the paramount importance of female activism and feminist perspectives for ensuring sustainable peace in human disarmament. And therefore, we aim to provide a floor for female feminist activists and politicians from grassroots organizations to share their personal stories and experiences as members of armed groups and as leaders in frontline organizations in different countries. So an overview of Scrap Weapons and what we do at Scrap. So Scrap Weapons is a campaign that suggests adopting legal international agreements as a basis for general and complete global disarmament. At Scrap Weapons, we are constantly developing research projects about disarmament, verification, emerging technologies, and of course, feminism in this sector. And we hope to mobilize governmental, non-governmental, economic, and expert forces in support of the same outcome. So briefly, my name is Vanessa. I am an advocacy advisor at Scrap Weapons, and along with my colleague today, Reem, we will be moderating this webinar. Before I hand over to Reem, that we have a particular feature today, which is that of translation. And therefore, to be able to hear Reem, you would have to switch the translation button to Spanish. It states Spanish, but in reality, it's going to be a translation feature from Arabic.
Yes, we can hear you.
Is somebody speaking or just like, because things are quiet? Vanessa, can you hear me? Vanessa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
انت سألني يا ريم ولا شنو السؤال؟ انت معي؟ الو ريم انت معي؟ ما سامعة كويس انا في سؤال كمان.
So I believe we are still having some technical issues here. We still can't hear Sarah speak. Therefore, I would kindly pass the floor to Jaconda to give her presentation. Thank you.
Was I given a floor?
Yes, you were, Sarah. If you're available to speak, that would be great right now. And then Jaconda can just go after you.
Okay, let her go. It looked like she has started, but because I didn't hear anything, let her go ahead and then I will follow her.
Sorry about that. Yes, please. Then Jaconda, please. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm very glad to be participating in this webinar for Scrap. What I can tell you is my experience was from a long time ago, I have to say that. I was involved in the Sandinista revolution in the 70s. This revolution triumphed in 1979. And a lot of us women were involved in many tasks in this revolution. The first thing I did was to be in the urban resistance. So we used to be able to work on keeping people safe, you know, people who were in safe houses, carrying them from here to there, carrying weapons. We had to keep our identity. I was, like we used to say, a legal person. That meant that I was not persecuted yet. And so I had a cover that allowed me to move around, to do things that other people were not able to do. And so I was a good cover up for, you know, keeping the other members who were not, who were clandestine, informed about things and carrying mail. At that time, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have fax, we didn't have computers. And so it was a lot of work to create this line of communication between the clandestine resistance. So that we were a lot of women who were working to facilitate those things until we were spotted by the security police. And then we had to go in hiding, or we had to go into exile. So in my case, I went into exile after I was spotted by the security police. They followed me like for 2 months constantly, and I wasn't sure what they were going to do. I wasn't sure if they were going to detain me, but they didn't detain me. I was able to resist, you know, and it was horrible because I had 2 kids and I was always afraid that they will come in barging in the middle of the night to get me. But then I was able to, once they caught the person who I was most work closer with, I had to leave the country, and I left. I went to Mexico, and I went then to Costa Rica. I had gotten some military training, so I got more military training, and I was in charge of logistics operations in Costa Rica. I also had civilian responsibilities, like be the liaison for the support we got in Costa Rica from diplomats from other countries, from the same Costa Rican government. And as I said before, I had 2 kids. So for me, it was quite complicated to have 2 daughters, plus doing all these things, plus I had to work to make my living. So I worked during the day, then during the night in Costa Rica, I would do all my clandestine affairs and go talk to people. And I had a lot of logistics responsibilities. Like I had to bring, for example, all the weapons for one assault. Oh, and I did participate in an assault when I was in Nicaragua. I was in charge of getting all the logistics again for this assault, and that was successful. It was a very successful assault where, you know, only 1 people died, and it was the guys took a house that where a lot of somocistas were having a party. And we asked for a lot of things to release the hostages. And we asked for, you know, the liberation of all our comrades who were in jail, and a plane, and $1 million. And they finally had to agree to all of these things. And it was a bloodless commando action. That was in 74. And then, you know, then in 78, the revolution triumphed in 79. We were able to create a very strong presence internationally. And we were able to also supply our troops with a lot of materials, with a lot of weapons, a lot of things that were needed, because it was a very strong armed struggle. Somoza had a regular army, and we were a guerrilla army. So, you know, at some point we had a place near Costa Rica where we did have a kind of regular struggle, with regular weapons, what is called a war of positions, not a guerrilla affair. But inside the country, there was a lot of guerrilla affairs going on. And the women mostly were in support roles. There were a lot of women fighting inside the country. In fact, the first liberated city in Nicaragua during the liberation war was liberated by 5 women. And the first city was a woman that was in charge of the taking of the city. So women had an important position in the guerrilla actions inside Nicaragua when we were at that war. And then we had what was called the Contra War. We had the Contra War, which was the United States decided that we were communists and dangerous in Nicaragua. So they armed the Somoza army that had been left from the struggle. They armed them, and then we had a 9-year war. And there, the Sandinistas, when they came to power, they decided that women should not be in the army. That was one of the things that us women got very mad about. But they said that it was very complicated to have women and men in the barracks, and the logistics of having women and men together. And then, so women were in administrative positions in the army. But when we had this Contra War, it was mostly men. Men were the ones who went out in the field. We had a military recruitment that was obligatory. And I lost myself. Well, that was obligatory. And then it was very hard to experience war in these terms for me personally. With my kids, I had to, I believe that motherhood is not compatible with war. And like Alberto Moravia, this Italian writer, said, motherhood is not compatible with the atomic bomb. I think we are much better at disarmament. I think we had an experience in Nicaragua when our first woman president, Violeta Chamorro, was the one who won the elections in 1990 against the Sandinistas, but she had a very important role in disarming what was left of the Contras and of that war that we had for many years. That was very painful. It cost us like 30,000 people were killed in that war. And so we have had this process of disarmament and trying to put into place the ethic of caring for women. That is my personal position. I think we women have a very important role to play in disarmament, in trying to stop all these wars, in trying to create forms of dialogue and conciliation. I think women in that regard, we have a very an experience that is very valuable for I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with this. Well, our experience is very valuable, and I think I'm glad I am able to come here and tell you about this because we are again having a problem with now this the guy who was the head of the Sandinistas has become a tyrant. He came back to power, and now we are having another kind of war, not a war precisely, but a very repressive regime. But not, this time we have decided to be pacifists and not get involved in another war. We have suffered so much from one war after another. So, and I think women are playing an important part in keeping this civic outlook going. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Jaconda. I particularly loved the emphasis you made on how a feminist perspective or a view brought about by a feminist lens emphasizes the humanization of the disarmament process and emphasizes how important the civil society is in the process. So thank you so much for that. I will now go on to introduce our next speaker, who is Sarah. So Sarah was born in yes, I'm just going to briefly introduce you first, and then I'll leave the floor to you, Sarah. So Sarah was born in an Itang refugee camp in Ethiopia in 1970. She is a mother and a grandmother as well. Sarah joined the armed group in the Sudan's People Liberation Movement and Army in 1988, and she was a nurse after returning from training in Cuba. And she served in the Bright Star campaign and was a leader for female soldiers in the SPLMA. Sarah worked in health centers for refugees in Ethiopia and Kenya, and she founded and is the current director of the Gender Empowerment for South Sudan organization. Sarah is also a former MP in the Upper Nile State Legislative Assembly and later as Minister of Social Development in the Upper Nile State. She was also a delegate in the High-Level Revitalization Forum for the IGAD-led mediation on South Sudan. Sarah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Rim, and greetings to all South America, the Arab world, Europe, and Africa, those that are listening. I'm happy to be here in Scrap Weapons event today. I am pleased to be with you guys. Yeah, I don't know. Are you able to see me?
Yes.
Okay. My stories, as Rim has already, Vanessa has already introduced you to me, who I was. I think there is really little to even add. My genesis, as you hear, I was born to a family of liberators, mom and dad together. That is why I ended up being born in Ethiopia refugee camp, Itang. And the family, I think their background are these people who believe in liberty. You know, you are born liberal and you have to maintain that. They don't believe in oppression and segregation and marginalization. So I think with this, one was socialized in that kind of environment. So I became at a very tender age as a child soldier. I was in B Farm, which was then the headquarters of the People Liberation Army, People Liberation Movement in 1985. At that time, I was underage for sure. And we were trained, basic trainings, and then on we benefited in 86 to be in Cuba. So I went to Cuba, and from Cuba, I gained to be trained as an auxiliary nurse. And because of curiosity and desire of continuing, people getting me? Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, then I did auxiliary nursing, which I felt that at my tender age, if I come back to the movement, I would contribute. I will contribute to my people, you know, in the struggle. So we came and we ended up now in the military headquarters, a training headquarters, where I further went through training in 1988. Now I used to be a proper soldier, but at the same time serving the forces and the new recruits under training, which was then Intifada, Intisar, and so on and so forth. After that, Ethiopian government drug as when it, you know, after Cold War, most of the communist and socialist countries in Africa lost together with Russia. And so Ethiopian government also, which was then a strong supporter of SPLA, SPLM, had to lose, and this forced us out of Ethiopia. But even before that, I was assigned to Bright Star campaign, and mostly on in the headquarters where the miners, the Red Army, the young one, are being trained in a place called Dima. So I went there with my skill to go and serve them as a medical corps. So went there, and one tried to even acquire further studies, because of course I had to do auxiliary nursing so that I can contribute to the struggle. So I felt there should be need, but that did not get enough chance. So we ended up in South Sudan soil, where we went through a lot of challenges. You know, the government of Sudan was pursuing us. The current government of Ethiopia, which was then Oyale, was also pursuing us. So we become criminal in two countries. It wasn't that easy. Young age, a girl in service, it was never easy because I was still a girl. I was separated from my parents. So there in a place called Pakok, a clinic was set. We have very limited resources, and we had a lot of cases of sickness, of incident, of, you know, all those, and we had to deal with them one way or the other. I remember when AICF, a French organization, had to come in, and I think this is when I understood the importance of these international relief and humanitarian response agencies. They really came at the right time. The ICRC also came in, and we were forced to clear a airstrip. You know, we didn't have tools, but we have to use all that we have to survive. And I remember a grade of biscuits, which they call BB5, save a lot of lives, trust me. So from there, we move on later on, because the government was recapturing places that we captured earlier. We were dealing also at this time with the rip within the movement, and this became the worst of all, you know, the internal rip, now added even to already suffering population, and particularly the young ones, furthermore, you know, furthering the suffering. But we have to deal with it. Now, my experience while we were in, I'm taking us a little bit back, as in the training, one of the things that I remember as challenge really that one went through is that we were trained hard. There was nothing like you are young. No, you have to go through whatever an adult goes. The only difference would be, you know, when we're practicing operating and shooting of guns, is where you will have a different, because you know there are those weapons that are requiring certain weight and capacity and strength, physical strength, for you to shoot. But otherwise, any other weapon that fit with your age and your body size and muscles, we were. But any other training, trust me, we have gone through it all. We went through it all. And this one find it a little bit hard because there was no consideration with the age factor. is not about a bad girl, but rather age. We felt there would have been consideration about age. You know, there are certain things you have to know. This person, body-wise, has anatomy-wise, has not yet fully grown to that level of kind of training. But we went through. The other thing is that always for us who are younger, we tend to be abused in so many ways. We went through a lot of physical abuse. You are caned for nothing. You are, we went through all that, and which was not even part of training, but it looked like some. When I was young, I used to see them like the cowards who can't talk to their fellow men. They come and resort into abusing us, the weak one. They want to come and show how much they would be. The other thing is that, which I felt was not right, is that we were never given any leadership empowerment. Like you are given a skill so that you become a decision maker. You can analyze, analytical capacity, where as people who need to survive, we were denied those. We were denied those. And it was like as if there was a program to hold you hostage of your ignorance of certain things. And it was done by design. It was done by design. So what they feed you much, feed you with, the hatred of the current regime. You are fed of, you can kill them, there is no compromise and all that. You are being brainwashed, basically. And good thing is that because one has been in Cuba, that sometimes you would be like, little education we gain in Cuba would cause you to reason a little bit, like, wow, should this be like that? Shouldn't be any different? If I'm being trained to be a capable, soldier, there should be maybe an element that should be added, or an element that should not have been included, because this become like we are just being molded into this kind of pathetic kind of soldiers, which to me, I remember there is this song, a great song that is well known in the SPLA, that even your own father you can kill. So the question would be, if your father or your mother you can kill, then whom are you liberating? This is a question I always ask myself. If I'm being told to kill my own, then who is it that the liberation is standing for? A question even up to today I have not gotten an answer to it. So in those training, there was nothing like a consideration that God has created us differently. There was nothing like that. The only difference is that girls, they have their rooms, or rather their compound or their dormitories, and boys. But beside that, there is nothing. Like when we talk about, the necessities that God made us to be women, there was nothing like that, And we know that the movement has a way to survive here and there. But because in the missions where the movement is selling its ideas and acquiring resources, it never considered that within our forces we have got female, we should have a special consideration, not because of anything special, but because the way God has made them to be women. It was lacking. It was 0%. And this subjected some of us into, like, you are there and you are constantly being reminded of being a woman, especially when you are having that special time in the month, that special time in the month where you may need to be considered that you are not that so well, because others come with cramp, or others come heavy and they needed, not to be humiliated in the forces, especially when there is activities to be done. There was nothing like that. There was absolutely 100% nothing like that. And so we were also facing some psychological torture within the forces, as female soldiers. The other thing is that there was also no capacity building much in upgrading the girls. Like giving ranks, girls are the least. We are being trained, and the worst part, especially when they see you, like, you should be there as a cook. You go through this other training, but you are good to do the cooking aspect of things. You know, you are being reminded, by the way, even if you could be an officer, still your place should be where women are. But when tough other things are being done, you are not being given those consideration. So there was an element of abuse. There was an element of abuse. Now, coming to women perspective in the army, much of it was the negative part, not the positive part, that women would have added value, you know, their level of intelligence, their talents that could be promoted. It has never, I haven't seen it in our forces during the liberation. Neither was our contribution promoted to be let to know that yes, even the marginalized of the marginalized are women, and our SPLA agenda is also to see to it that the world should be aware within our forces we have got women, and if there is any knowledge, that extra knowledge that others have, this experience could be adapted to improve our female cadres. And in the movement, there was nothing like that. So our agenda was not being sold. We only have to benefit maybe alongside the Red Army, because we were Red Army. So when the word go out as Red Army, then you identify because of a Red Army, but there was nothing special about you as a woman because of how God created you. Now, when it comes to disarmament, by the time we are coming to get out, it's mostly, like for me, it is through marriage, and this is what also I saw from most of my female comrades. We all left Laytown because of marriage. You are married and then you ended up being a mother, of course, and that, you know, like my sister, my previous speaker mentioned it, you have no any other way. But there is nothing like, okay, this is a time you can be given, you know, like a program or a strategy to say when our female cadres has to be, you know, when it reaches a strategy for them now to transit from being active soldiers or officers or cadres to when they become families, and if they have to continue, for example, how do they need to continue? There was nothing like that. So it would be you to use your natural instinct to see whether it is right time for you to move on. Otherwise, you can always be just there, and they will take pleasure in doing whatever. And the saddest thing was, like, we didn't have a female soldier. I mean, a female officer. In all my assignment, I never come across a female officer that would be my line leader. I never seen that. I've always been under the male counterpart leaders who do as they wish, and I'm always the you know, the subordinate or the junior to be dealt with in the harsh way possible.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Sarah. I really do love the emphasis that you just made on the last part on the importance of having female mentors for young girls who are engaged in disarmament. I really loved the emphasis you made on the importance of leadership training, of mentoring. And in that respect, we actually have a webinar on the 28th of April that will be focused solely on that topic. Therefore, we'll provide the link so that if anyone is interested in furthering the topic, they can register and learn more about how training and mentorship programs work for female young women who are engaged in disarmament. At this point, I would love to pass the floor to our third speaker, who is Nayat. Nayat is currently a PhD student in psychology and social issues facing the free refugees in the UK. She heads the National Women Movement in Sudan, and she is a co-founder of Women for Peace and Security in Sudan, and also a member in the coordination committee of Sudanese women in civic and political groups. Nayat joined the armed group, the Sudan's People Liberation Movement, or ARMY, in 2002, and she is the deputy head of the movement's office in Khartoum State. Nayat also negotiated on the movement's behalf in the Judah platform and was responsible for the IDPS and the refugee file for the party during the negotiations. The floor is yours, Nayat. Thank you.
Sorry, everyone, due to logistical issues, Najat will be speaking and then I'll be translating after her because we just couldn't make the simultaneous translation work. We apologize for that again.
السلام عليكم جميعا. كيف عاملين؟ والنساء المناضلات والأخ المناضل اللي معانا، وكيف الحال؟ أنا طبعا نجاة سليمان مصطفى أبو بكر من منطقة من شمال دارفور، من حتة اسمها أمبرو، مع في الشمال يعني حدود الشرقية لتشاد، يعني ممكن في 4-5 ساعات بندخل تشاد والقبائل المشتركة. يعني أنا تجربتي طبعا داير أحكي لكم. أول حاجة معانا أختنا اسمها سارة يا ربي من جنوب السودان. ممكن ترجمي ده؟
Okay, she just said hello to everyone and she's very pleased to be here with her fellow comrades. And this is Najat. She is from North Darfur. She is from like her village is Umbaru, which is very close to the border between Sudan and Chad. And she is going to now talk about her experience.
أنا بس دار أول حاجة أبدأ بالاعتذار لأختنا سارة من جنوب السودان. أنا والله وكنت أنا صغيرة يعني في المتوسط، ودائما بسمع بأنه في حرب في جنوب السودان، يعني والوقت ده أنا في دارفور. يعني إحنا بتركيبة الجيش السوداني الجنود مننا نحن يعني، ونحن المشينا قاتلنا الحركة الشعبية في جنوب السودان. 90% من الجنود المشاركين كانوا من أبناء دارفور، وإحنا بنعتذر في الحتة دي. وأنا أقدر أذكركم برضه إن ده أخوي طبيب الأصغر مني برضه استشهد في الحتة دي مع الحكومة الإنغاز، عملوا لهم يعني غسيل دماغ. أنا كان الوحيد المعترضة من الأسرة إنه الحرب دي ما حرب حقيقية ودي حرب تجارة باسم الدين، لكن يعني قدر الله ما شاء فعل يعني.
Okay. She just wanted to apologize to Sarah because like basically the war on South Sudan, most of the soldiers in the Sudanese army hailed from Darfur. So she knew about the war from a very young age when she was in school and she heard about it. And one of her brothers died in the war actually because she feels that he was brainwashed. So she said that, I mean, from the very beginning, she was against what was going on in South Sudan, the war on South Sudan, and that was being done in the name of religion.
طبعا ده رجع لورا. طبعا الثورات السودانية طبعا احنا كإقليم من 56 بنعاني التهميش، لكن باسم الأوروبا والإسلام ان احنا يعني سكتنا يعني بالحتة دي، يعني ما قاعدين نتكلم. يقول لنا انتم مالكم، انتم مسلمين ودي الناس كفار وعندهم أهداف وإسرائيل داخلة معاه، ما بعرفة أمريكا، حاجات زي ده. إحنا المهم في برين ووشن في الحتة دي يعني. وأما عن دارفور إحنا عندنا كمية من الحركات أخمدت. نحت دارفور في اللهيب الأحمر ده من زمن الإنجليز، في ثورات كثيرة قامت، والسويني في نيالا، داود يحيى بولاد برضو كان جمع من الحركة الشعبية، برضو قتل في جبل مرة. دي كلها الثورات اللي كانت يعني أخمدت. لكن نفس الثورات دي ونفس الأشخاص ديل بمرور الزمن يعني فعلا هي أخمدت، لكن الفكرة زي ما قالوا تموت، والفكرة حية، فكرة الثورة حية. وفي شباب اتجمعوا قبل 2002 يعني اتجمعوا، والشباب ديل يعني كانوا بدوا بالضبط الحركتين، يعني قاموا بصفة رسمية. الحركة الأولى اللي هي قامت بمؤتمر من ألمانيا اللي هو حركة العدل المساواة المنشق من هنا يعني من النظام، وحركة تحرير السودان طبعا هم مجموعة من الشباب اللي بيسموهم الأحرار دير يعني قاموا بالفكرة دي. وكان في جزء منهم في جبل مرة كانوا بقيادة عبد الواحد نور، وفي جزء منهم في كرنوي أو أبو قمرة بالتحديد بقيادة مناوي. عندهم مجموعة، المجموعة دي تكونت من 19، ما كان حتى مناوي معاهم في البداية يعني. المجموعة دي تكونت يعني من الظلم اللي بيحصل لهم، وكان في يعني لو طلعوا يعني بيقتلوهم باسم النهب المسلح.
Darfur has always been marginalized since, you know, Sudan's independence, and they were always kind of told to be quiet and not to show any kind of resistance, and different conflicts were kind of raged against them in the name of religion. And she said that for a long time people were brainwashed, and some began organizing, and they began organizing kind of in a revolutionary way, but unfortunately they were killed off as individuals or as groups by the government. So, but she said that ideas don't die, and at the end of the day, the ideas kept moving forward until so two main armed groups were established in 2002. One is called Justice and Equality Movement, led by some like professionals, and another movement led by young men called Sudan Liberation Army and Movement, and it was led by different commanders. The two prominent ones are Minni Minnawi and Abdul Wahid Noor.
أنا الحركتين دول في 2002 لما الحركة دي بدت أنا كنت في السعودية. يعني في أول شهر كنت أنا في 2000 وشهر 3 مع بداية الحركة. أنا كنت في أول إعلان كانوا أعلنوه عن قيام الحركة في منطقة قولو، أنا لحظتها في السعودية، وطوالي أعلنت إني أنا هنضم مع دير. والله صراحة من غير ما يتلوا إنه يكونوا أهدافهم شنو، لكن عرفت إنه دير مهمشين ودير من منطقتي، يعني ناس أصلا وكلنا بنعاني من نفس التهميش. وأنا صراحة يعني مع نظام الإنغاث يعني ما عملت لنا أي حاجة، بس كان نظام مبني على إنك تأيده وعلى التأييد الغبلي أكتر شيء، وعشان إنك تلقى مكانه لازم أنت يعني تأيدهم وتعمل الحاجات اللي هم عايزينهم، بس أنت ما عندك أي قرار يعني، وما حتى ما بيسمعوا لأي زول ذاته إلا زول يكون معاه حتى بعد ذاك يكون. عشان كده أول ما الحركة دي علنت طوالي أنا انضميت ليهم، بالرغم إنه أنا كان زوجي برضو قال لي أنت ما تدمي مع ناس دكتور جبريل خليل، الله هاي الوقت ده كان هو في هولندا، قال لي أنت ما تنضمي لهم أقرب لك. قلت لهم تاني أنا ما تقولوا لي أقرب لك ولا ما أقرب لك، أنا بنضم بديل. ما قال لي ديل ناس متحررين، قلت لهم بس أنا مع المتحررين ديل، لأنه الحركة الإسلامية نموذج غير يعني رشيد وحكم غير عادل، يعني ما بنضم لهم.
In 2002, she was in Saudi Arabia working at the time there. And then when she heard about the movements being established, GEM and SLA, she decided, even without knowing their vision or their objective, she decided that if this is a movement that is going to fight for the marginalized people in Darfur, she's going to join. And she announced that she's going to join the SLA. And she said even her husband at the time told her that you should join GEM, but because she was so frustrated at the government, which was Islamist, and GEM was considered an Islamist movement, she decided to join the more progressive SLA, Sudan Liberation Army and Movement. And this is how she became a member of SLAM.
أنا طبعاً انضمامي كان انضميت أنا كسياسية، لكن لما انضميت كسياسية أنا بحثت على مكتبهم في السعودية هم منهم، وكانوا الموجودين من ذاته في الوقت ده وأنشطتهم كيف، وعرفت إنه عندهم أنشطة وفي ناس شغالين. أنا يعني دوري كان شنو، يعني ما عندي كان وظيفة واضحة بكل أسف، يعني ما يعني بتكلم عن الحركة وبمشي اجتماعات الحركة، وما في مكتب للمرأة في السعودية، لكن أنا منضمة. والشغل اللي أنا قاعدة أشتغله حتى الرجال ممكن ما يكونوا قاعدين يقولوا. أنا بشتغل مثلا في التلفون، طلع زوجي كده للشغل، أنا بقعد بس التلفون بعمل حاجاتي سريع. ما كنت شغالة في السعودية، بس في التلفون الثابت ده، وبنشر إنه في حركة وينضموا معاه. بجي بشحن تلفوني، بضرب للأهل هناك في البلد بإنه أنا مثلا منطقتي هم ناس إدارة أهلية ضد الحاجات دي. الإدارة الأهلية هي سيئة، والإدارة الأهلية كانت يعني مايلة للمؤتمر الوطني. أنا يعني طالعة من أسرة الإدارة الأهلية، لكن يعني خديت لأسرتي ولكل الناس اللي أنا بعرفهم، وبحكم يعني وجودي عندهم، ويعني يعني هم بيعزوني شديد يعني. وعلى حسب موقعنا في الأسرة برضو قلت لهم أنتوا يعني حتى لو ما دايرين يعني تدخلوا مع الناس ديل ما تعادوهم. الناس ديل ما حيضركم انتوا، الناس ديل عندهم مطالب من الحكومة وما حيضروا زول قاعد هنا، وانتوا بس خلوهم، يعني انتوا ما تشتغلوا ضدهم، ما تشتغلوا مخابرات. حتى يعني في جزء كبير جدا من الشباب اللي انضموا كان بفضل انا، يعني حتى الرجال انضموا بفضل انا.
She said that at the time, so she began finding the members who are in the members from the movement who are in Saudi Arabia. She would meet, she would go to meetings, and then at the time when she became like unemployed and not working, the minute like she would wake up in the morning, she would start making phone calls, recruiting people to the movement, calling people in Sudan, in Saudi Arabia, in different places, attracting them to the movement. And she would even call people in her village. And she said that at the time, one of the problems that she was facing is that her family, she comes from a family who are part of the native administration or the tribal administration in her area. And she had to speak to them and tell them, do not stand against this armed movement. You have to support, even if you don't want to support them, do not stand against them, and make sure that you don't share their news. And she said that at the time she was able to recruit a lot of people into the movement, and especially young people.
في 2000 وفي 2004 في النهاية رجعت السودان، ولسه كان الحركة لسه ما وقعت اتفاقية السلام. بعد ما أنا رجعت في 2005 2006 تم التوقيع. لكن قبل الكلام ده كله لما رجعت هنا بالداخل برضو يعني يا داب الأمور بقت سهلة، وبقيت أتصل من هنا مباشرة. يعني حتى أنا بعرف كثيرين جدا من الميدان، يعني بديهم أي معلومة هم عايزينه. لحد الوقت ده أنا ما عندي أي صلة في الحركة، لكن بساعد بكل ما عندي. يعني مثلا يعني في المعسكرات حتى أهلنا يعني ناس منطقتنا بالذات يعني ضد الحاجة دي، هم بينتموا للإدارة الأهلية اللي أنا طالعة منها، كانوا ضد الفكرة وهم في تشات. برضه بنرسل لهم رسائل كثيرة جدا إنه أنتوا يا جماعة أبغى خلوكم مع الناس زين. في الآخر اتحيدوا، بيقوا خلاص عرفوا إنه صح الدولة دي هي الظالمة وديل ناس حقيقيين. وكده حركة تحرير السودان كان يعني كل الناس انضمت ليها. يعني في 2004 2005 كل الشباب من الجامعات اشتغلنا هنا. بعد ما جيت لو في أي تجمع طلابي أنا بمشي يعني بخاطبهم وبكلمهم وبنورهم إنه أهمية الانضمام للحركة وكده. يعني للوقت ده أنا أصلا ما عندي أي صفة، بس أنا انضميت وكده. ما في زول قاعد يسأل إني قلتي تعملي كده ليه أنت كده. يعني أنا بس يعني يعني مش طوعي يعني خلاص، يعني ما ولا قاعد أسأل من الهيكل هي شنو والزول يبقى شنو، ما قاعد أسأل من الحاجات دي. لكن أنا داير الحركة دي تنجح، وما شايفة إنه في حاجات منفصلة للنساء أصلاً، ما في وجود. لكن النساء في الميدان، يعني إحنا عندنا حتى النساء بحكم العرف، النساء حتى في المعسكرات حتى لو معارضات للحركة دي، حتى لو من أي حتة ما عندهم مشكلة. يعني شوف النساء في المعسكرات بيجمعوا الأكل والشراب، يعني مثلاً الحطب، يعني في نساء بيشيلوا الحطب في راسهم مع السلاح، بخط السلاح في النص وبيشيلوا الحطب ده في راسهم بيطلعوا بالجبل. يعني هم مش الحطب وجه، لكن الوسط ده كله سلاح، بيطلعوا بالجبل فوق للجيش. في جزء منهم بيجمعوا في الأكل، في الشراب، في العيش، في الفحم، في الحاجات، في أي حاجة هم بيجمعوا من قروشهم. الغريبة إنه نفس النساء ممكن يجمعوا لحركة العدل والمساواة، وممكن يجمعوا لحركة تحرير السودان، بس ما دايرين أولادهم ديل يجوعوا، ما دايرين يعني وقت ما ديل يجوعوا في شكل معسكرات مثلا في الميدان، هم بكون في جنب المعسكرات، بكون في معسكرات للحركة الكفاح المسلح. هم بيحاولوا بيدعموا أي طرف، ما بقولوا ده عدل مساواة، بقولوا ده حركة تحرير السودان. بس النساء يعني بس كان دورهم بس دعم 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 لغاية ما نجحوا.
So 2005, she came back to Sudan with her family, and then she started working for the favor of the movement. So basically, she started advocating with her family and with her relatives who at the time were in the IDP camps, internally displaced people's camps in Chad. And then she started working with university students. So every time she would hear about any gathering for students from Darfur at different universities, she would go and she would speak to them, and she would start recruiting them to join the movement. So she said 2004, 2005, many youth joined the movement because they really believed that it is the way forward for them and it is going to bring change to Darfur. So she said that, and this was her role. And at the time, she didn't have a title in the movement, but she just really believed in it and its vision, and she wanted it to succeed. She wanted it to achieve its goals. She said that women were very instrumental in the success of the movement. So women in the field, in different places in Darfur, they did a lot of logistics. women would take food to the movement, to the army, basically, component of the movement. They would take any food that they could afford, any food that they could gather, taking even sometimes using their own personal resources to support the movement. And they would also take, they would transport the guns to the movement. So they would take, they would bring wood, and they would hide the guns inside the wood, and then they would carry it on their head, pretending that they're going to collect wood, or that they are returning from collection of wood. And they would go up the mountain to the movement, to their camps, and give and transport the weapons and so on. So this is the instrumental role that women would play. And there's so many other roles that she wants to talk about.
تاني عندنا من الحاجات اللي بيعملوها النساء، في بنات برضو قرر IT، وكان السرية ممنوع إنه زول يحمل السرية يمشي يوديه لزول هنا يعني يصين ولا كده. في بنات شغالات صيانة وهم اللي بيمشوا الميدان بيجيبوا الموبايلات دي بيصينوها ما عارف شنو. يعني مثلا يقول لك احنا ماشيين نشتغل خضار برا بالكارو، يمشوا الأسواق الخارجية، يجي يلاقوا واحد من المسلحين ديل، يقوم يديه ويجمع له الموبايلات السريات اللي هي دايره صيانه بنفس الصوره، بس هنا بعدين يعني هي بكون ودت خضار لكن ما باعته، ده بتغطيه. يعني تقول مثلا الخضار ده ما يتباع لكن بتدخل فيه السريات جوا وتجي راجعه بيه مثلا المدن الكبيره عشان يصينوا السريه.
Okay. So and there were a lot of young women who studied IT and had knowledge in IT and computer science. So they would pretend that they are selling vegetable. So they would ride their donkeys and take with them a lot of vegetables and go to the market pretending that they are, vegetable sellers. But then they would meet, men from the movement in the market, and they would give them Thuraya phones, and then they would hide it in their vegetables, and then they would come back and fix the Thuraya phones and return them in the same way. So they would do different roles just as a cover basically, and to make sure that they don't get exposed.
وفي عدد كبير جدا كل الاستخبارات وكل الحاجات اللي اشتغلت اللي هم النساء، يعني بيوروا تحركات الحكومة شنو، هنا في شنو المهمة، يعني كل المعلومات عبر النساء بيدخل الحركات المسلحة بأسماء، يعني مثلا نجوا مارين كده، يعني ما بصور مختلفة يعني بالفعل.
Yes. So, and she said that women were basically like the security wing of the movement. So they were the ones that they would, watch the government, watch the army, what they're doing, and what is happening in the city, analyze the contents, and then they would basically relay this information to the movement to make sure that they are giving them security and intelligence information that they could use to make their, to protect themselves.
في 2006 تم توقيع اتفاق أبوجا، وكل الرفاق جاب الداخل. وفي اللحظة دي برضو ما في مكتب للمرأة، يعني بس في اثنين من النساء، واحدة في الهيكل فوق، احنا نظام هيكلتنا انه في مساعد الرئيس، في واحدة في الشؤون الاجتماعية، والثانية رئيسة بتاعت مكتب الخرطوم. هم بس كانوا اهتمامهم فقط بالمرتين ديل، يعني وبكل أسف حتى الاثنين ديل يعني كان ظهورهم متأخر جدا، ومن هنا من الخرطوم ظهروا فجأة كده، يعني بدون أي. في واحدة ظهرت في الجولة السابعة اللي هو تم في الجولة السادسة انضمت للحركة، في الجولة السابعة وقعوا الجماعة هي انضمت هناك. في واحدة برضو المهم بس ظاهرة هي دكتورة طبعا، وأول ما جات انضمت أدوها مكتب الخرطوم. لكن كل النساء بالآلاف الجو الشغالين، وفي ناس أولادهم في الحركة، والناس اللي دعموا الحركات هناك في دارفور وجوا هذه المدن هنا، كانوا بس يعني عدد وكلنا عدد.
So in 2006, there was a peace agreement that was signed between the movement and between the government, and the movement was able to come to Khartoum, especially its leaders. But then this is when she saw that women were excluded. So there were only 2 women in the leadership of the movement, only two of them, and one of them appeared during the negotiations. During the negotiation round, the 6th round of the negotiations that actually led to the signing of the peace agreement. So women became, once again, the thousands of women who were supporting and who were working with the movement and who were supporting them in the field during the past few years became kind of an accessory, an afterthought, and they were excluded again from the different different leadership, structures of the movement after the peace agreement was signed. Okay, we will stop here to give Shireen a chance to talk, and we will return later if there are any questions.
So much for that, Areem. And thank you, Najat, so much for your contribution. I very much appreciated, once again, the emphasis that you made on these structures that are designed for men and by men, which don't really give a space to women to actually thrive in, and therefore they need to be changed. I would now pass the mic on to Shireen, but before that, I would love to introduce our final speaker for today. So Shireen is the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict, and she is the MENA Region Liaison Officer, apologies, for the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. Shireen also volunteers as executive member of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in the Lebanon section. And since 2003, she has been a Stop Killer Robots campaign team leader in Lebanon. And as mentioned before, she is a regional gender focal point for various international boards. I would love to pass the mic on to you, Shireen, now. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I was enjoying every second of the talk of the previous speakers. Thank you so much, Najat, Sarah, and Jaganda, for the wonderful experiences that you have lived, and which makes my work so relevant to say that I will work and I feel that my work is something that your children will not have to live what you have lived. What I do mainly is I do grassroots activism so that we can push forward the agendas of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in terms of the women, peace and security, and the ATT and the POA plan of action. But let me start with my presentation. I was really just flowing with the presentations. Thank you so much. Let me go back now to MENA to talk about some of the root causes of conflict in the MENA region, include the ongoing militarization of societies, reprisals against peace builders and women peace builders and activists, social and gender inequalities, high number of refugees and IDPs, high rates of unemployment, poverty, and illiteracy, even before the consequences of COVID-19, and patriarchal stereotypes, missed opportunities of development throughout a long history along the MDGs and the SDGs. This is a background that we need to know about the MENA and the Arab world that I'm going to focus on. The Arab world presents only 5% of the world population. At the same time, the region receives 36% of the world's arms trade. 5 of the top 10 arms importing countries also belong to this region. We know that small arms light weapons are further used to facilitate sexual and gender-based violence, increased number of child soldiers, as we heard now, Sarah, and reinforces violent, gender, patriarchal, masculine social norms. So what if all these factors do not have regulated, they do not have regulations of any meaningfully implemented laws by absence of national mechanisms and regional mechanisms? This is also a question that we need to see within the Arab region. I will divide my talk into 2 parts. The first part, I will cover my work within WOLF, a project that we're working on, and the second part will be on the work that I do with GPAC. Within the work that I've done with WOLF Lebanon section, we had a small project last year in 2020 to talk about the misuse and use of light weapon, small arms and light weapon, and the GBV. The project was as a result of certain recommendations of a UPR on Lebanon that we also submitted with the WOLF Secretariat. Lebanon definitely has many issues that we can cover. First, if we look at now, also Najat was talking about the war, at the end of war, the peace processes, DDR, and the role of women, and like what happens after World War. In Lebanon, we did not have a DDR. We did not have a transitional justice, and hence issues are very much complicated. Between 2007 and 2007, we had almost 750,000 small arms light weapon. In 2017, we had 1,927,000 small arms light weapon, while we had only 30,000 license in general, 135 of which were allocated to women. So just with this picture, we can see what kind of gender imbalance we have, what kind even of violations to the national laws of Lebanon, where the weapons and ammunition law does not approve of acquisition of arms outside the military security official forces. Second thing, Lebanon became a state party of the ATT in 2019. Lebanon had its first national action plan on 1325 also in 2019. Lebanon was passing through a revolution in 2019, where it set the issues of state building and definitely issues of arms, issues of equality, issues of state building, and the rule of law. So these were all factors that led us to do this study. The study had objectives in terms of how much women are aware of the national laws, how much they're aware of the international laws, and how we wanted to know how did the NGOs who work on GBV do trainings or capacity building to their staff or to women to be able to report cases and violations of usages and misusages of small arms and light weapon. One more point is that the Lebanese National Action Plan had at its second strategic priority the issue of small arms light weapon in terms of its prevention lens. I think the Lebanese National Action Plan is one of the best national action plans in terms of prevention lens. This is not to talk about implementation. I'm talking in general about the NAP itself. So during the implementation of the project, we had many challenges. Definitely, COVID was a challenge. And one of the most important challenges was the Lebanon explosion that you were all most probably aware of. This explosion by itself is something we need also to see, like how come a 34.7 azote ammoniac nitrate product were present in Lebanon for such a long time with no kind of monitoring or like how to deal with it within the official military institutions. So within all this background, we can see the kind of work that we're dealing with, and definitely of the findings that we had, because of the political confessional system that we have in Lebanon, because of the lack of representation of women in the decision-making level, because of the inability for rotation of power within the Lebanese context, we can see that corruption and inability to have a management for conflict or crisis were prevailing in Lebanon. Second thing, we saw that there were no documentation of gender segregated data on a survivor or victims of violence, especially, or like connotation of whether this kind of violence was a result of weapons or was it a result of any kind of method. That there was no mention at all. We had also like to see what kind of training the NGO related to GBV had to work on. And one of the most important things that the findings of the study will tackle is the missed opportunity that the National Action Plan could have had, in the sense that the NAP, though it included the small arms light weapon as one of its strategic priorities, yet it was unable to have as civil society as implementers or participants of this indicator. And this brings us to our first challenge that we have in terms of the Lebanese system, which is the politicization of the small arms light weapon. It's time for us to humanize it. It's time for us to look at small arms light weapon that kills people, whether at home, whether at the street, in an unlawful way, not in a politicized way, not in the way that politicians have been able to survive the system through maybe giving license to people without taking into account records or criminal records and such. So this is in general, I want to sum up the small arms light weapon survey. I want to also here to mention, I will put it later on in the chat, there was a song lately after the new year by a lady talking about small arms light weapon and the implications of these small arms weapon, how they're used by cultural and traditional way of celebrations, or in funerals, or even like when a son gets a good grade in school, people will just have these bullets everywhere, and many people die out of these stray bullets. So it's a very, very interesting song that I will share shortly. Now I will come to the second part of my talk, which is the work that we do in GPAC. And here I want to wish also like Najat to be part of this, because we have Sudan also as part of this. Just I want to note that this work with WILF was funded by the Secretariat. Now I'm going to talk about the work that we've done within GPAC, within the Women, Peace and Security Coalition, which was funded in 2019 by the Dutch, and till 2020 as well, because it was our annual plan. And in 2021, it's funded by CEDA. So our work and the vision that we have within GPAC falls within the issue that the trajectory of conflict in Middle East and North Africa does not respect political or territorial boundaries, as the majority of security challenges, including small arms light weapon circulation, are cross-border in nature. So we think that the slightest increase in violence and humanitarian instability exerts pressure on and leads to further insecurity in the entire region. That's why the proliferation of small arms and light weapon is maintained through patriarchal social belief in the militarized defense. So our network of peace builders in MENA have decided to, now I'm going to declare something which I'm glad to announce it in here in the on this panel with these marvelous ladies. So first, I'm going to cover 3 points. First point that we think of, and we think that this is how we want to feminize the issue of disarmament, is the transformation towards human security. We need to move away from patriarchal idea that defense and militarization come hand in hand with security. Instead, we need to engage with communities to identify and understand the root causes of conflict and support them in preventing conflict and sustaining peace. We need to establish early warning, early response systems with community monitors in the region who can collect data, analyze it, and work in multi-stakeholders and gender and age-inclusive manner to find the solutions. At GPAC, we have been setting the networks capable of gathering and analyzing this data through both of like our Youth Peace and Security Coalition and our work that we do within the YPS network, where we came up to think that a community activists together to inspire local ownership, people-centered approach, and inclusive decision-making through a regional coalition that we have named a Small Arms Light Weapon in MENA region, with an objective to end small arms light weapon violations in terms of gender and youth perspectives. So this is something that we are doing at a regional level with the 16 countries that we have within MENA. Second is the focus on building national capacities to implement its disarmament obligation and stop conflicts from arising or prevent their continuation. So this includes promoting disarmament as a critical peace-building priority. Second, to support capacities of member states to regulate arms and establish early warning mechanisms. Third, to ensure that security sector reform and DDR programs as components of peace processes and not as a post-agreement undertaking, just as Sarah was complaining now. In this sense, this armament effort needs to take into consideration not only gendered impact on women, but also needs to generate data about how many women have access and use arms. Third and final point is the shift of focus towards development. Countries in MENA region are lagging behind in their SDG implementation because of the conflict. However, the implementation of the SDGs provides a platform for integrating peace building into national development plans and cooperation frameworks, ensuring that resources are allocated to efforts dedicated to addressing risks and sustaining peace. Building strong societies and institutions, combating corruption, reducing inequality and vulnerabilities are all components critical for advancing peace building, sustaining peace at the national level. So what I'm saying, it's not a revolutionary recommendations based on something that we do not know. However, gaining political will and encouraging accountability for the implementation of international legal and policy frameworks remain a challenge. One small shift that we can do is allowing local peace builders, young women, young men, young people, women, refugees to be part of the dialogue, give them an active role, build their sense of ownership and trust them in becoming a meaningful and intentional partners at all spheres of society, from disarmament to social development to defense. These are mainly my messages for today. Thank you. Back to you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for that, Shireen. I super loved your presentation, and I really did love the emphasis you made on the importance of civil society, the importance of the people who most of the times we are advocating on behalf for. Therefore, I would love to now move on to the Q&A session. Due to time constraints, I would love to just ask one question directed to the whole panel, and then we will end our webinar here. So the question I would love to know is, you all in one way or the other talked about the importance of civil society, you talked about the importance of mentorship and the importance of leadership, as well as the role that international organizations can play in terms of building these movements and actually making it easier to actually, for these movements to thrive. Therefore, the question that I would love to ask is, what would be the one advice that you could give to an international organization that wants to help address and tackle the issues that feminist leaders in their organizations or feminist leaders in disarmament are feeling? To whoever would like to start, and then you just pass the mic on. Thank you.
Anyone can start?
Yes, please, Sarah.
Well, my message that I could leave with everyone is that based on my experience, one thing I've known is that ignorance is the biggest weapon. Economic is the second. Like currently in South Sudan, even though we have an independent country, you know the number of refugees that has gone to the nearby countries is greater than then when we were fighting as Sudan, you know. And the whole issue is that the ignorant label, it is a big problem that need to be fought, because it is about the citizen. If the citizen doesn't know how or his own right, it can be exploited. Second is about the economic. Today, this proliferation of a slide weapon or even the medium weapons is becoming a business. Okay, it become a business, and those who buy it, they go and use it to intimidate or go and loot others. Like you can hear, there is a lot of reading. If these two can be given a priority, and women are encouraged to really take their place. Because one thing, by the way, let me not say that when I was a soldier, I just went out as a vulnerable. Today, my voice among South Sudanese women, I am proud. And I didn't develop this resilience out of blue. From my pain I went through, I actually built resilience. I can stand and I feel that I own and I have right like any other man. And I think this is also something that should be encouraged among women, that whether the decision is being made, they should have representative. They don't need to beg. They need to go and say, this is our problem, our space. They have to create their own place. They shouldn't expect others to create for them. What we need from our other sisters can hold our hand to help us reach out where we want to reach. For example, give us the knowledge that we needed and give us the skill that we needed to reach there. And so that we know, well, when I don't, you are there. You are out there that I can call and you can say, okay, where is your hand? I can actually pull you up to here, but you have to climb yourself. Like you can hear about bilateral, trilateral. These are guys doing this lateral. Where are the women lateral? When are women going to have this bilateral and trilateral? We need also to establish, or create that platform where women, they have to identify and just go, not just by voice, by action. This is all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. Shireen, would you like to go after?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, for that. Thank you, Vanessa, for that question. Definitely, I would say first, listen to us. We are not numbers. We don't die in numbers, we die in names. And we're dying lately so much and everywhere in the world. It's time not only to listen to us and act accordingly. I think programs like the Secretary General was calling about meaningful participation of women to cease fire. So these are all like calls that we need to refer to and to make the international community, donors, member states accountable for that. Accountability is major in here. What we need at the national level, we need to have knowledge generation. We need women in rural areas, women everywhere to know about their rights, about the international mechanisms that go to disarmament, about their right to live in peace. I mean, like it's not easy for somebody to be living with somebody who has the pistol everywhere at home without taking into account. I mean, like in the first place, there's no need to have this weapon, but if so, there are certain regulations that we need to follow. For us as grassroots and regional networks, I think long-term flexible funding is very important for us to have holistic and really impactful work. We do lots of work. Sometimes it's gone unrecognized. We need also to raise the issue of the role that the peace builders work and to try to support them. What is needed is gender aggregated data collections. This is a must. Last, I think the international community has to abide by, even if they are state party or not, with the ATT. It's something we need to abide by. We need to look at the international, at the development of the artificial intelligence, and we need to stop any kind of development in terms of the killer robots, and to have a treaty, a binding treaty where a human control is there. We need to name and shame the countries that send weapons to states such as Libya or Yemen or Syria or Iraq or Lebanon, or I mean, like when you're sending weapons, do you expect it like to be a flower? When you're sending weapon to a conflict area where you have no mechanisms of the rule of law, where you have this conflict, this weapon is going to kill people. Last thing, I want also like the grassroots organizations in countries that have this weapon industry also to hold their governments accountable. We need to work together. I mean, it's a two ways. Like they need to help us, and we need also to give them information. To give them information, we need to collect data. We need to be working. We need to work, and we need to utilize the social media. Maybe through SCARP, maybe through Control Arms, maybe through the Killer Robots campaign, through Wealth Critical Wealth, through GPACS networks. So we have all these international networks that have their grassroots activism that we need to support. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Shireen, for that answer. Unfortunately, Joconda had to leave us due to time constraints. Therefore, the last person addressing this question will be Nagat, sorry.
سؤالة أنا بس بقول إنه المنظمات العالمية تساعدنا في تطبيق الاتفاقية سلام اتفاق جوبا لسلام السودان، وبالأخص في الترتيبات الأمنية. ونحن كنساء دايرين جيش واحد، الجيش الواحد، ويكون برضه في الترتيبات الأمنية النساء اللي كان ناضلا مع الكفاح المسلح يكونوا ضمن الترتيبات الأمنية، يعني لما نجي يعملوا DDR. وتاني برضو في حاجة بتاعت SSR النساء المصاحبات ديل ما دايرين حقهم يعني يروح، دايرين برضو يعني يلقوا حقوقهم بأي صورة من الصور. لكن احنا بهمنا بس تطبيق اتفاق السلام مع تطبيق الغرام 1325 وبس الضغط في الاتجاه ده، يعني احنا أهم شيء عندنا.
She is saying that there are two important things. The first thing is the international organizations should support in the implementation of the Juba peace agreement for peace in Sudan that was signed last year, and her movement is actually part of the signatories to the Juba peace agreement. So this agreement is very important for her, and she feels that it should be supported by the international organizations and the international community, especially the part on security arrangements, because this is where the peace process materializes on the ground. Another thing she was saying is that SSR is very important, and so far women have not been part of any conversation on SSR, so women should be integrated on the talk on SSR because there were so many female combatants who fought in the field for so long. And the female combatants should be integrated into the SSR and into the security arrangement processes. Another thing is Sudan has a national action plan on resolution 1325. So it should also be implemented because it's going to solve a lot of issues related to protection and security for women. And this is a priority, and a lot of technical help is needed to make sure that it's implemented.
Thank you so much for that answer, Najat, and thank you so much to all our speakers today. Truly appreciate the fact that you found time to be with us despite your busy schedules. So our webinar is now coming to an end. Our next webinar in the series is scheduled for the 28th of April. And it's going to be on funding, training, and mentoring, opportunities and obstacles for women in disarmament. And that is a topic that we did touch on quite a bit in this webinar. Therefore, if you're interested, please find more information on our website, on our social media platforms, or by using the link in the chat box. Thank you so much to all our panelists and to everyone who attended today. We hope that you enjoyed it and had a good time. And please keep an eye on our social media outlets for more information. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you, Najat. Sorry is acceptable. Apology acceptable. Love you all, guys,
so
and see you
Thank
again
you.
on 28th. And happy